Good afternoon, welcome to APW Market Wrap number 175. So this week, what is the Labour Party planning for the UK property market? Will there be rent controls, capital gains tax increases, what's going to be going on? So housing was a central issue at last week's Labour Party conference in Liverpool, with the grand house building plans announced alongside stamp duty reform and renter reform. During the Labour Party conference, there were promises from Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves to reform stamp duty and the planning system. Angela Rayner, Labour's deputy leader, promised to build more affordable social housing if he gets into power. Rayner said, "I pledge to you today that Keir and I will deliver the biggest boost in affordable and social housing in a generation, and that includes council housing." This was followed by Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer's pledge to get Britain building it again. He said Labour will commit to building 1.5 million more affordable homes for over a 5-year period. He also announced plans to build new towns to create green communities with beautiful homes, green spaces and reliable transport links. The plan to get Britain building again will also include devolving power to local mayors, granting them stronger powers over planning and control over housing investment, which has been pretty important in places like Manchester, where they have that, although it hasn't saved them from the HS2 cancellation. Similar to the Conservative government, Starmer was also clear Labour will prioritise building on brownfield sites rather than in the countryside. The Labour Party will issue planning passports for urban brownfield developments, with a fast-track approval and delivery of high-density housing on urban brownfield sites. Speaking in Liverpool last week, Mr Starmer said, "Today we launch a new plan to get Britain building again. No more land bankers sitting comfortably on brownfield sites." It all sounds very glorious. Will it occur? If you look at any politicians, potentially not. He went on to say no more councils refusing to develop a local plan because they preferred the backdoor deal. No more inertia in the face of resistance. He said it's time to build 1.5 million homes across the country, opportunity for first-time buyers in every community, new development corporations with power to remove the blockages. I mean, it does need to be reviewed. I mean, it costs the UK apparently 200 million per kilometre for HS2, whereas on the continent it's less than 40 million. How is that? It's because of all our planning blockages, as they call it, amongst other things, of course. He goes on to say where there are good jobs, where there is good infrastructure, where there is good land for affordable homes, we'll get shovels in the ground and cranes in the sky and build the next generation of Labour new towns. What do we feel about this? He's looking back over all our years of doing property. Okay, although Labour's 5-year house building target is essentially the same as Conservative parties, the Labour Party at least has some more credibility. Looking at the government's present record, you know, they've only managed about 120,000 a year, which is pretty weak. Also, housing wasn't mentioned once by the Prime Minister at his party's conference in Manchester, whereas Labour has been talking about it constantly. 300,000 new homes a year has been a target for the past decade. It's never been attained. Why will it suddenly change? Frankly, I can't see it. Credibility. Conservatives have none of that after the U-turn on HS2 and their fixation on the long term rather than immediate problems and public support. It's taken years, but finally the majority of people agree that more homes are needed, and it may be that Labour can brush aside the objections of the usual suspects and get on and deliver. That's a quote from Mr Pryor, who's a very well-known property sourcer in the UK. As for building social houses on brownfield sites, he goes on to say his call is build, build, build. Presumably good for house builders, but also good for the 1.5 million on social housing lists and the 120,000 children who woke up this very morning in the equivalent of bed and breakfast accommodation. I mean, that's terrible, so we need to build up social housing. Rachel Reeves has also made it clear that Labour intends to target overseas buyers by increasing stamp duty. She reaffirmed her intention to make 70% of British household homeowners Sounds a bit like Margaret Thatcher. To help them achieve this, the Labour Party plans to use any extra revenue generated by this stamp duty surcharge in building more affordable houses. I don't think that's going to really help. It's going to be a drop in the water, really, but that's a little bit jingoistic sort of thing for them to say. At present, as you know, overseas buyers pay an additional 2% stamp duty plus a 3% for buying a second home in the UK. So basically it's 5% is added to standard stamp duty levels. So if we're buying from overseas and we're buying a £3,000 property, we pay an extra £6,000 in stamp duty, which I think for a lot of buyers is not a lot. That's one of the plans they're looking at. They didn't go on to elaborate how much they would increase the stamp duty by. Will they double it, make it 10%? What will they do with it? But it means that certain types of property in certain locations will become more expensive. Ms. Reeves went on to say it is not right that while so many people are struggling, so many of our homes are bought by overseas buyers who may own a property and then leave it vacant, driving up prices while young people and families are desperate to get onto the housing ladder. Let's just look at where they're doing that. Is central London. It's millions of pounds. We're looking at those sort of locations. It's not as if it's going to be equally spread all over the country. So it's a bit of a jingoistic thing they're saying. Overseas demand does increase house prices in certain locations, making them less affordable. London city centre is probably the biggest trophy location where people like to buy. It would be better actually if you try to make houses in those sort of locations not more expensive by charging more stamp duty, which will push the house prices up, but by actually making them cheaper and getting people onto the ladder better. So perhaps get rid of stamp duty for people who are at the starting blocks, who are at the very basis of buying. Guy Meacock, who's director of the buying agency Prime Purchase, says a very similar thing. It's a mistake. Foreign owners of property are regarded as low-hanging fruit when it comes to increasing taxation, even though they may not necessarily be buying homes that British people want. Taxing them more will undoubtedly have an impact on the prime London markets. It will hit the top end of the market at a time when the government is looking to tax people more and more. People buying property here already pay a lot of tax into the system, and well done them. So while it might be an easy option and it provides a great soundbite post-Brexit, really, should we be cutting ourselves adrift from Europe even more? And can we really afford to deter more buyers who provide a lot of wealth to the UK's marketplace and economy? It's certainly not a measure that's going to enhance the UK's reputation, he states. In addition, he goes on to quote, arguably, if you want to kickstart the market and bring in more revenue, stamp duty needs to be reduced rather than increased. 100%, I agree completely with that. As for buying agent Henry Pryor, who we quoted earlier on, he suspects further stamp duty surcharges will make little or no difference. Higher stamp duty on overseas buyers continues to be the current government's determination. Basically, it's the UK hanging up a sign at Dover saying no foreigners. It's an easy win and may well be matched by an increase in buy-to-let landlords, an increase on buy-to-let landlords. It will make little difference to the market as a whole, as most buyers who are impacted will still be able to claim the tax back when they sell, offsetting purchase and sales costs against their capital gains tax bill. Rent controls. Neither Keir Starmer, Miss Reeves or any of the other speakers talked about rent controls. That could be keeping it out of the news, so when it's announced they're not going back on their word, which is a particularly politised trick, or it could be they're not planning to do that. Certainly on the continent where they have got rent controls, it hasn't done a lot of good and has caused a lot of problems. So it's positive that it's not been mentioned. Putting in higher stamp duty is not great. So that's it for this week. That is Market Wrap number 175. Thank you very much for watching. Do hope you liked it. Do comment if you can. Give your thoughts on what you think the Labour Party's up to, and will it be any better or worse than Conservatives. Thank you very much. Cheerio.